I think the best way to describe Darkrai is that it is a good berry specialist and a pretty decent skill specialist, but it is not an ingredient specialist. However, it does provide you with some bonus ingredients, a bit more than what usual berry or skill Pokemon would give you. All of that though comes at a cost, a very high cost in fact. Besides main skill seeds, it's gonna cost you more than double to raise this thing. Welcome back to another Pokemon Sleep video, it's Bro Vinny here. That was a quick summary of what Darkrai is, in my opinion, and in the rest of this video, we're going to take a look at all of the stats of Darkrai, we're going to make comparisons, we're going to look at different berry specialists, skill specialists, and ingredient specialists compared to how Darkrai performs. But before all of that, let's take a look at the stats of Darkrai, let's take a look at how you unlock its skills, and whether there's a good way to utilize your Eureka seeds, which are going to be very limited for some time anyway. So this is Darkrai. It's got a unique specialty, the first of its kind, called the All Specialty. But is it actually a specialist in all departments? Or is it a jack of all trades but a master of none? When you first catch one, and the very first time we could catch a Darkrai was during the Cresselia versus Darkrai event. Subsequently, you can still catch it, but just through the New Moon Day events. When you first catch it, it has not many stats. It does have a berry specialist stat. It's got ×2 dark berries. And it does have what seems to be an ingredient specialist stat ×2 sausages. But you'll quickly find that this is a little misleading because subsequent ingredient slots don't play out the way the first ingredient slot played out. And it has no sub-skills and no nature. Regarding the nature, there's no currently known way to change that, that's just how it is. So immediately right off the bat, Darkrai actually loses some edge in comparisons. So even if Darkrai is better in a 1-to-1 comparison to another Pokemon, know that another Pokemon, you can re-hunt that to improve its nature. Whereas Darkrai, well, there's currently no known way to improve its nature. So a Weavile and Darkrai have about the same berry output, and we'll look at the comparisons in a moment, but if a Weavile has a speed of help up nature, that would beat Darkrai even if all other stats are the same. So just bear that in mind whenever we make comparisons using neutral stats, is that that's actually a little unfair to other Pokemon that can have good natures when Darkrai can't. And for its skill, it's called Bad Dreams Charge Strength M. It's basically a very powerful Charge Strength M, but it'll come at a cost of 12 energy for every Pokemon on your team if they are not Dark types. So the more Dark types you have on your team, the better to avoid that energy penalty. We'll come back to this in a moment to look at some numbers to see whether that trade-off on energy is actually worth the strength that you gain. One thing that we can say for sure though is that it is a berry specialist at the very least, because it's got ×2 berries and that's not going to change. Of course, if you've got berry finding S, it'll be ×3, but it's just like a berry specialist. And it has a very reasonable frequency. Darkrai's base frequency is 48 minutes, Houndoom is 55, so it beats Houndoom in frequency, but Weavile is 45, so Weavile is a little better than Darkrai in terms of its speed. But Weavile suffers from a relatively high ingredient rate, making its berry output a little worse than otherwise, whereas Darkrai has a pretty average ingredient rate of 20%. And actually overall, with neutral stats, Darkrai and Weavile pretty much produce about the same amount of berries, both beating out Houndoom. And despite having a lower ingredient rate and a slower speed, Darkrai produces more sausages than Weavile. So more ingredients on a berry specialist is always good as long as we're not harming the berry production. So one of the reasons we don't like ingredient finding on a berry specialist like Weavile is because you increase the sausages, not that that's bad, but you reduce the berries in order to compensate. In the case of Darkrai, that's not what's happening. The reason why it has more sausages, if sausage is the ingredient list, is because it has in its 3 ingredient slots 2, 4, and 6 sausages. Whereas Weavile, being a berry specialist, has 1, 2, and 4 only. So more sausages in this case does not come as a compromise to the berry output. So in terms of ingredient strength, this is purely better for Darkrai compared to Weavile. So from a berry and ingredient perspective, Darkrai does beat Weavile. Where they mainly differ though is the skills, and we'll cover that towards the end. However, this slightly improved amount of sausages is not quite enough for it to be called an ingredient specialist. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself. We'll come back to this in a moment once we look at ingredients. Let's finish off the stats for Darkrai. It requires 25 friendship points to catch, and you only ever get to catch one and keep one. Any more Darkrai you get in the future will become Eureka seeds, which is what you need to unlock those sub-skills or ingredient slots. Now, while the data mine tells us that Darkrai has befriending medals, the game tells us you can't get befriending badges for Darkrai. So in other words, we can't really control whether we guarantee the gold skills at the level 10 or 25 slot. And also we don't get any boosted shiny chance with befriending it. But then Darkrai is currently shiny locked anyway, so that doesn't really matter. Now, as you befriend Darkrai, you'll get these Eureka seeds. You get one for free if you completed the Cresselia vs Darkrai event, which you can already use to unlock an ingredient slot or a sub-skill slot. I would personally recommend doing a sub-skill first, only because I don't personally see Darkrai as an ingredient specialist. But if you chose to have a level 30 ingredient unlock, well, look, it's not harmful. Overall, you're still improving Darkrai, and at some point you'll need to unlock that level 30 ingredient anyway. It's probably better than getting, say, Research EXP bonus anyway. And honestly, until we fill more of these stats, I don't think we'll be able to see Darkrai in much use anyway. So if you decided to unlock the ingredient first, that's fine. Just keep collecting seeds so that you can unlock more other stuff. Now, Eureka seeds are very expensive, considering that it will cost you 25 friendship bars in order to catch a Darkrai to get a seed. If you haven't already caught a Darkrai, I'm not sure if your first Darkrai caught will actually give you a seed as well. Let me know in the comment section below if you're a new player, you just joined the game and you just catch a Darkrai in the New Moon event coming up, whether you get a seed for your first Darkrai catch. And if you're wondering whether it's worth using Master Biscuit in order to get the Eureka seed from Darkrai, assuming that Darkrai doesn't get all full because of the New Moon Day effect, using Poke Biscuits only as a free-to-play player from the regular shop, it'll cost you about 3100 sleep points in order to catch Darkrai, and I included a chance of big hits on the way. Whereas for a Master Biscuit, it's going to cost you 4000 sleep points, so I think Poke Biscuits is the way to go. If you're a Premium Pass user using Great Biscuits, it'll cost you about 2800 sleep points in order to catch Darkrai. So even less worth using Master Biscuit for the amount of sleep points that will cost you. So mathematically speaking, it's better to focus on using Poke or Great Biscuits than to use Master Biscuit. Now, when you do go to your bag to use your Eureka Seed, you'll notice that the Eureka Seed is specifically tailored to Darkrai, meaning that you can't hold on to these to use for another mythical Pokemon anyway, so you might as well just use them for Darkrai. When you click on the Eureka Seed, you'll be given 2 to 3 options of what to do. You can, 1, convert it to candy, which I would definitely avoid. I don't think that needs to be said, but you can convert it to 40 candies. If you've already got a perfectly built Darkrai, then you might do this. You might change it to candies. If that were the case though, I probably wouldn't be spending my Poke Biscuits catching more Darkrai anyway. If I had a perfectly built Darkrai, why would I be befriending more Darkrai to get more seeds just to convert them to candies? I would rather save those biscuits to catch other stuff and try to use handy candies instead. Regardless, that is an option in the top here. If you press use, you'll be given the choice between ingredients or sub-skills. The first time you can either unlock the level 30 ingredient, or you could re-roll the level 1 ingredient, which I would advise against because you can purely improve Darkrai, or you could try to make it better or worse by changing the first ingredient. Why not just make it better? So I would start with the level 30 or go for sub-skills. So between unlocking or re-rolling, I would definitely choose to unlock. Now, some people did choose to re-roll the first ingredient instead. Paul Silver from the Pokemon Sleep Discord re-rolled their ingredient and got Moo Moo Milk for the level 1 ingredient instead of sausages. And what actually happens in that case is the game will actually ask you whether you actually want to change that ingredient. It says ingredient slot 1 will change to Moo Moo Milk ×2. Are you sure you want to proceed? Now, if you choose not to proceed, the seed will not be returned to you. It will simply convert to 40 Darkrai candies. I mean, it's still better than nothing, but that's what happens when you try to re-roll a stat. Of course, you can choose to change it, then the sausages will become milk. Now, if you choose to unlock the level 30 ingredient slot, so ingredient slot 2, you can click this button that says ingredients to see all the possible ingredients that Darkrai can have. Now, there are a total of 17 ingredients in the game right now, and only 8 of them are available for Darkrai, so it cannot cover every ingredient. It can't do mono tails or leeks as much as I wanted to. That would have really changed the game. So the ingredients that it can't cover are tails, leeks, mushrooms, eggs, potatoes, oils, gingers, tomatoes, and cacao. Out of this list of ingredients, the strongest ingredient list for Darkrai in terms of base strength only, so not looking at recipes or recipe bonuses, base strength only is to have coffee, and herbs. And I'll show you that in a moment. So for the level 30 slot, ideally you would roll coffee from a base strength perspective. Although what you really should be going for, if possible, of course there's a lot of seed wastage here to try and get the ideal ingredient list. I would much rather just hunt an ingredient specialist instead. But what you're really looking for a Darkrai, if possible, is to fill gaps in your ingredient coverage. So if you don't have a really good Beware or maybe even a Dragonite to cover corn, and you roll corn on Darkrai, that's not bad for you. For everyone's situation, it's going to be a little different. Maybe your herb coverage or your coffee coverage is especially bad, so then Darkrai could help you with that. It's not going to replace ingredient specialists, but it is going to be helpful to have some additional help. Now, if instead you press the level 1 ingredient slot, what will actually happen is the ingredient that you already have unlocked, so the sausages in this case, will disappear from this list. So then you'll only have a 1 in 7 chance of getting the ingredient that you want. Now, if you press subskill, you'll see this screen, and if you press subskills again, you'll be shown the list of subskills that Darkrai can unlock, and that's all of them. You can unlock any subskill available in the game right now. There is a little bug though, and apparently in English this hasn't changed. It says subskills are more or less likely to be chosen depending on their color. This has something to do with how subskills were originally designed to roll. So in normal Pokemon catchers, in each subskill slot, it is first decided whether you're going to get gold, blue, or white skill first, and then it's decided which of the skills you get. There's some maths behind it which I still don't fully understand. I'm not going to go through it today. But for Darkrai, apparently in the updated text in Japanese, and this is a translation of it, is that all subskills have equal chance of being selected. So it is quite literally 1 in 17 chance to get any of these skills the first time you unlock a subskill, because there are 17 skills. Side note, if you happen to roll a lower tier skill that's beneficial, but you can subskill seed it to raise its tier level, so for example helping speed S here can be raised to helping speed M, I would advise against doing that straight away. Unless for some reason you really want to use Darkrai right now and you want it to be the best that it can be, then go ahead. But I would suggest that you wait until you unlock level 25 and maybe even level 50 with Eureka seeds first, because if you happen to get helping speed M in one of these other slots, you just wasted a subskill seed. It's just mathematically better to wait until you unlock as many subskills as you can before deciding either to reroll or to raise the tier level with a subskill seed. Same thing with if you get like a bad subskill, like let's say Research EXP here, go ahead and do your level 25 and 50 first. You might just get Berry Finding and Helping bonus in the other 2 subskills that you don't actually need to re-roll with the Eureka seed and waste a Eureka seed on your level 10 when you would have been happy with the other 2 already. You could have gone and used it for the level 30 ingredient list instead. So try to unlock stats before you start re-rolling the stats. By the way, to help us determine whether this is actually accurate, I've actually started a Google form for you guys to tell us what you got for your Eureka seed. Did you get helping bonus? Did you get a level 30 ingredient? And we're planning to see whether the rates are truly equally weighted. It's a very simple form. You only have to fill out this form once because we only have one Eureka seed right now. So I'll leave a link to this form in the description and the comment section below. It'll just help us make sure everything checks out at the end of the day. We do have some very preliminary data on that, very small sample size right now, so I'm counting on you guys to put more data in. But right now, it does look like a fairly even distribution among the sub skills. There's not one that really stands out, although more people are getting skill level up and skill trigger, and not many are getting ingredient finder or sleep exp at the moment. So that was all the base stats and information about unlocking skills and how the mechanic of Darkrai works. But there's one more thing we haven't actually talked about, and we really need to cover this before we talk about whether it's actually good. It's the EXP curve. This thing is costly to raise. This chart was made by Abunzu from Pokemon Math Cord. In grey is where our normal Pokemon are, and the little numbers are their EXP required to raise to that level. In orange are the pseudo legends like Tyranitar and Dragonite. In blue are the legendaries like Suicune, Raikou, and Entei. But Darkrai is not a legendary, it is a mythical Pokemon. Unfortunately, mythical is in yellow. Now, in simple terms, Darkrai costs you more than double what it would cost to raise a regular Pokemon. It costs 120% more EXP than a regular Pokemon to raise. So it's gonna take double your resources to get to the same level that, say, a Weavile would take to get to. You could think of it as raising 2 Weavile and a little bit more at the same time. So then it's a question of whether its stats are good enough to put that much resource in it to use. And just to put more practical numbers into play, if you raise a Pokemon, say from level 10, a normal Pokemon to get to level 60 would cost you just about 2,000 candies. For Darkrai, it'll cost you 4,400 candies. So now it's very important for us to know whether it's worth investing in a Darkrai. So now let's go back to the comparisons. We already know that Darkrai is as good as Weavile, if not a little better, for its berry plus ingredient strength. We're going to ignore the skill component because it's very hard to value Tasty Chance S. But what I want to show you next is that Darkrai is also the best for ingredients amongst berry specialists. And to show you that, I'm using the Pokédex function of the Rainanex calculator. I'm going to only look at berry specialists and all specialists that's Darkrai and display and rank them by their ingredient strength. And at the top of it, and you might remember me saying this earlier in the video, is a Darkrai that has coffee, and herb that is the highest ingredient strength from a base strength perspective. In fact, it's so high, it's higher than any other berry specialist that we know of, beating out the second best Weavile by about 23%, just to put a number to it. Now, if we were to choose the weakest ingredient strength, so if we scroll all the way to the bottom of this list, it's still 6,300, and that's Apple, which is the lowest ingredient strength. Since level 1 is always ×2 drops, Apple is at the bottom, with herbs and corn following it in the list. At 6,300, then it just loses out to Weavile only by a little bit and then becomes second place. So in terms of ingredient strength, for berry specialists, Darkrai is pretty much hands down the best, with very few exceptions. So it almost doesn't matter what ingredient you roll on Darkrai, it's going to make a lot of it compared to berry specialists. But in terms of ingredients, that's pretty much where it ends, because now if we compare it to ingredient specialists, just talking about base strength, we're not talking about mono ingredient build, we're not talking about recipe bonus or anything like that, we're just looking at base strength. Have a look at this. Unfortunately, Darkrai falls pretty far down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on only final evolution just so we compare like for like. You don't even see Darkrai because it's quite literally at the bottom. It's worse than even Dugtrio with its best ingredient list, coffee, herb. Dragonite beats Darkrai by a whopping double ingredient strength. So if you ask me, Darkrai is not really an all specialist. It's more a berry plus skill specialist, which I'll explain in a moment, but not quite an ingredient specialist. It does come with bonus ingredients as it beats out the berry specialists. Although, and this is for interests only, if we were to rank them based on only level 1, then the numbers do change around quite a bit, so be careful about how you rank Darkrai. Darkrai ranks a lot higher if you only look at the level 1 ingredient, because remember, ingredient specialists, their level 1 slot is almost always, in fact always, times 2 ingredient drop, and having an average ingredient rate for Darkrai and a decent speed times 2 ingredient drop, it should fall somewhere in the middle. The problem is the number of ingredient drops at its level 30 and level 60 slots. So when we turn on the level 30 slot in the Pokédex, it already gets much worse, falling into the second last place because it only drops 3 coffee at its level 30 slot. Vikavolt drops 5 coffee. So if they had the same speed and ingredient rate, you can see that Vikavolt makes a lot more coffee than Darkrai. It does match Aggron in the coffee drops. Aggron only drops 3 coffee, but Aggron has a naturally much higher ingredient rate at about 30%, Darkrai being at 20%, so Aggron still beats Darkrai, even with a sausage coffee ingredient list. And needless to say, at level 60, it doesn't get much better than that. For Vikavolt, it drops 7 coffee at level 60. For Darkrai, it drops only 4 at level 60. Okay, now let's take a look at ingredients in a more practical sense. We're now going to focus on the mono ingredient list for Darkrai. If we could choose exactly which ingredients Darkrai has, is there one mono ingredient list where it performs the best? So the way to know that is to compare it with the current best mono ingredient specialist for each of the ingredients that it can farm. Needless to say, sausage is one of the ingredients that Darkrai can farm. It does better than Weavile, but how does it compare to, say, Aggron, which is the current king of sausages? Unfortunately for Darkrai, Aggron beats it by about 67% in sausages. How about apples? Skeledirge beats Darkrai by about 50%. Golem beats Darkrai by about 59% in beans. We kinda saw this earlier. Dragonite beats Darkrai by a whopping 115% in herbs. Venusaur beats Darkrai by 67% in honey. Blastoise beats Darkrai by 73% in milk. Vikavolt beats Darkrai by 84% in coffee. Beware beats Darkrai by 92% in corn. So that means that the best ingredient for Darkrai for a mono ingredient build, not because the ingredient strength is strong, but because for the same ingredient, it's not as bad compared to its competitors, is apples. Compared to Skeledirge, Skeledirge is just about 50% better. The smallest difference in our 8 comparisons so far. Of course, this kind of comparison can change when new releases come along, so if there's a new better mono ingredient for apples, then Darkrai might not be ideal to have apples after all. So if you happen to land apples, it's actually not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you don't have a good Skeledirge. So ultimately, the best ingredients for Darkrai depends on what you're missing so that it can help you farm that until you get a good ingredient specialist for it. And I think there is something to be said about its flexibility. So if you happen to find the perfect Skeledirge one day, then maybe it's time to change the ingredient list on Darkrai to something else. So there is some flexibility there. Yes, Eureka seeds are costly. Maybe one day there'll be better ways for us to farm them, maybe through events or whatever. But you can think of Darkrai as an investment that can never be wrong. Yes, it's expensive, but you can't actually go wrong. I've seen people invest in Pokemon and actually go wrong and have to start again, and that's a waste of resources as well. While it is expensive, you can only have one mythical Pokemon of that species anyway. And over time, you'll continue to replace worse stats with better stats. Maybe change your Research EXP to Skill Trigger or Helping Bonus or Helping Speed or Berry Finding S. And it will only keep getting better. How many times have you caught a Pokemon, but you've already invested that species? It's already level 60 or 65, you can't really go back. Well, you don't need to worry about that for Darkrai. And so that leaves us with just one more thing to compare. Skill. Naturally, I would choose Ampharos to compare with because Bad Dreams Charge Strength M is quite similar to Charge Strength M. This is what normal Charge Strength M looks like. It can go to level 7 and at max strength provide 6400 strength to Snorlax. By comparison, Bad Dreams go to level 6 only, but more than doubles the amount of strength that regular Charge Strength M does. At 13,000 strength at level 6, that is a crazy amount. The only catch is any Pokemon on your team that isn't Dark type will lose 12 energy. Thankfully, the amount of energy you lose doesn't increase if you increase the skill level. So it's always going to be 12 energy down no matter the skill level. So how do we compare a loss in energy versus a gain in strength? Obviously, a loss of energy is going to be harmful to your Pokemon, therefore harmful in the strength that you acquire subsequently after the energy is lost. Is there a way for us to convert the energy lost into a strength so that we can take that strength away from that 13,000 to see whether it still beats Ampharos? Of course, I'm assuming a situation where your whole team is non-Dark types, besides Darkrai. If your whole team is Dark types, then this energy down doesn't really affect it. Unfortunately, it's not like you can swap in a full Dark type team and then have Darkrai trigger its skill because of a certain update that changed the rules so that when you do change a Pokemon on the team, all the skills get wiped, so then you lose the skill trigger. And considering there's no Dark type healer, you can't actually run a full Dark type team because without a healer, your Dark type Pokemon will just gradually lose their energy. So how do we look at the energy lost as a strength? And look, this is a bit far-fetched because energy gain and farming rate is a complex relation because it depends on what energy level you're already at, how the rates compare. I'm going to simplify it by saying, look, if you have a really good healer, that keeps your team above 80% all day, and when it doesn't, then you use a nap to help recover. I'm going to assume that 12 energy lost is not enough to bring you below 80%. If it is, you need a better healer. But having said that, when a healer overheals, so you don't want to go above 150%, even at 130%, I start swapping out the healer for other Pokemon to start farming something else. So we can pose the question differently by saying, how long does it take for my main healer to heal 12 energy on my Pokemon to recover the losses from Darkrai? Because that amount of time, my healer could have swapped out for another farmer for, say, berries instead. So it's a very roundabout theoretical thing that I'm doing, but it's probably the simplest way we can compare this. And so take that strength away from this and then see whether it still beats regular Charge Strength M, which is what I'm trying to do here. I'm going to use a Gardevoir with Helping Bonus and Skill Trigger. It does about 7 triggers in a day in 24 hours. Each trigger is worth 18 energy, which is 126 energy in 24 hours. So that's about 10% of the time is needed to regain 12 energy. And 10% of 24 hours is about 2.4 hours, let's say about 2.5 hours. So every time my Darkrai triggers, I need to spend approximately 2.5 hours in order to regain the losses by having a healer on the team if the whole team is not Dark type. So the question is, if I had spent that 2.5 hours farming with another Pokemon that I could have done if I didn't run Darkrai at all, how much strength would that Pokemon farm? Let's take a pretty average Raichu, for example, with a berry finding and no nature, just level 3 skill. In total, it farms 33,000 strength in a day. 10% of that is about 3.3 thousand strength. But if it were a really broken Raichu, let's say it's got berry finding, helping bonus, and helping speed M, it farms about 50,000 strength in a day. 10% of that is about 5,000 strength. So ballpark 3,000 to 5,000 strength is lost by not running Raichu, and I spend that time running Gardevoir to regain the heals, and I am ignoring the strength Gardevoir itself provides, but let's just keep it simple. 3,000 to 5,000 strength is lost per trigger. So rough estimate, let's take about 3.5 to 4,000 strength away from the level 6 trigger, making this approximately 10,000 strength and 0 energy loss as an equivalent. Of course, this is not exact science, but we just want to get a gauge of how good this skill actually is given these costs. So then this skill is still better than Charged Strength M in raw power output. But there's a catch. The catch is the skill trigger rate. If a skill is really weak, but it triggers a lot throughout the day, it can beat a stronger skill that doesn't trigger a lot. Kind of like our analysis in the early days comparing Golduck and Ampharos. Golduck being better if you could collect every single trigger. Which brings us back to Darkrai versus Ampharos. Ampharos triggers 4.36 times a day with neutral skills. Darkrai triggers 2.51 times. We're going to ignore the strength part because we're doing our own calculations. This strength utilizes the actual Bad Dreams Charged Strength M without adjustment for the energy. So we want to know 2.51 times 10,000, does it beat Ampharos? Well, pretty simple maths. It comes out to be about 25,000, slightly losing out to Ampharos, but because our maths is such a rough estimate, let's just say about the same. So you can't really quote me on the strength numbers for Darkrai because it varies by situation and what you're replacing a Gardevoir with to farm. The stronger the Pokemon that you're replacing Gardevoir with when it overheals, the worse this skill would be because you could have farmed that extra strength with another Pokemon in that time. But matching Ampharos in skill output while still doing berries at the level of Weavile is why I say that Darkrai is closest to being a dual berry skill specialist with some bonus ingredients not quite matching ingredient specialists. It does get better still if more of your team were dark type farmers because there's less energy harm. If you need a potato and ginger, and of course these two Houndoom and Weavile are berry specialists, you can use them anytime at Snowdrop Tundra along with Darkrai, maybe swapping out Tyranitar with a healer every now and then just to maintain the regular drain of energy. This can be a very powerful team. Darkrai itself carrying on like a Ampharos plus a Weavile together with the flexibility of changing its ingredient list to your liking. Of course, with a cost, with a very heavy cost in fact, but it's still possible. And one more thing that makes Darkrai just like a skill specialist is that it has been confirmed to have double triggers. So Darkrai can bank 2 skills at once, but in one go you will lose 24 energy. You better be ready to recover that loss. Or maybe just change out your team completely. If your whole team is low on energy, change it out, wait for you to track a nap to put them back in. Just have another set of farmers ready to go if your Darkrai is draining your energy like crazy. And then there's one more trick to this. Zeta mentioned this. If you have the Pokemon Go++, you can put Darkrai to go to sleep with you overnight. And of course, overnight, quite often your energy can drain quite a lot. And if your sleep session recovers enough energy anyway, and quite often it does, more than enough to go back to 100, before you sync your Go++, trigger your Darkrai, then sync your Go++, return your Pokemon's energy back to 100, then you haven't really lost anything at all. And given that Darkrai, especially if it has berry finding, is a really good Pokemon to sleep with, just like all berry specialists, this makes a lot of sense. So with the right strategy and planning, Darkrai can be a very good Pokemon. With the good news that you can't make a mistake with Darkrai. You can get bad rolls, you can be unlucky, but you just can't make a mistake. If you make a mistake, eventually you'll get another Eureka seed, then you'll change that stat. So if you decide to raise your Darkrai, once you've unlocked several of those sub-skills and ingredients, you just can't go wrong. So the final question now is, what is the ideal build for Darkrai? We often talk about berry finding being good for berry specialists, skill trigger being good for skill specialists. Ingredient finding is a bit awkward for it because then it will take away some of the berries if you're actually running berry finding on it. And while it does provide some ingredients, it shouldn't be the focus, and it will be very difficult for you to have the right ingredient list, costing you a lot of Eureka seeds which you already need for your sub skills. I'd probably say avoid ingredient finding if possible. Stats like berry finding, helping speed, skill trigger, these are all going to be positive for Darkrai. But if you've been watching my videos for a while, you probably want to know a bit more than that. You want to know not just what's good for Darkrai, what is the best for Darkrai. And I don't even need to look at the numbers to tell you helping bonus is going to be the best, because a whole team of helping bonus Pokemon gives you increase of 33% production. But the thing about speed is that it improves berry, ingredient, and skill. So 33% more berry, more ingredient, and more skill. Berry finding alone gives you 50% more berries, but doesn't give you anything else. So let's compare helping bonus and berry finding. Of course, berry finding gives you a little bit more berries. Helping bonus still gives you a really good amount of berries. You get more ingredients and more skill strength. For Darkrai, this is comparing helping bonus and berry finding. The total strength is significantly better with helping bonus. Not saying don't get berry finding is still very powerful, but because of the all specialty, because of the boost to skill as well, helping bonus is a huge benefit for Darkrai. I always compare helping bonus as though it's 25% speed boost, because I assume the rest of the team are all providing 5% for a fair comparison. So with helping bonus, yes, you get a little less berries than the berry finding option, but you get more ingredients and you get more skill strength. Since berry finding doesn't give you any extra skill strength, this is where the difference comes from, about 9,000 difference because of that skill strength. Being an all specialty, speed is where it shines the most. If instead of helping bonus, it was helping speed M, so a little less speed, it still beats berry finding in terms of total strength. Now, I have set everything to level 6. If you don't have level 6 main skill, the difference is going to be a lot lower. In fact, the berry finding one might come out on top. In fact, let's take a look. If I set them to level 1, yep, so the berry finding just about matches the helping speed one. But you can see that even helping speed is very powerful. So speed is where it's at. Ideally, helping bonus. Then helping speed M, still beating out a single berry finding stat. Helping bonus with berry finding still kind of loses out to the helping speed M plus helping bonus. Not by a huge amount, but it is still better. So lots of speed is going to be the most beneficial for Darkrai. Needless to say, skill trigger alone also doesn't beat helping speed M, because helping speed M boosts berry and skill, whereas skill trigger only boosts skill. The combined effect is that helping speed M still beats out skill trigger just by a little bit. So the clear winning stat of all is helping bonus for Darkrai. And if you happen to land a helping bonus for Darkrai, maybe don't invest all the way to level 6 main skill just yet. In case you land things like skill level up S or M, maybe you can re-roll them for other stuff later on, but you could utilize them for now so that you don't have to spend your main skill seed right away. But if you did max out the skill level already, don't worry, you can re-roll that skill level up to another stat later on anyway. So like I said, you can't really make a mistake investing Darkrai. Just unlock everything you haven't unlocked yet, then re-roll the stuff you don't want. And so the last thing I want to do for this video is to use my Darkrai seed, which I haven't yet. I wanted to hold on to the seed because I needed to see all the menu options and so on to make this video. Now that the video is done, I'm ready to unlock, and I'm going to do something weird. Okay, so you can't unlock the second slot until I unlock the first slot. Okay, I'm going to unlock a sub skill. I think that can be worth more than unlocking an ingredient, and I'm not going to focus Darkrai for ingredient farming. So here we go, really hoping to land helping bonus, but berry finding is fine. Helping speed M is going to be really good. If I get helping speed S, not going to complain, but I wouldn't upgrade it just yet, even though it is a really good skill. Skill trigger M, not bad. Skill level up M could save me the main seats temporarily. Let's see what happens. Just don't give me research EXP up, please. Now loading. Why is it loading? That is a very long animation. It's a white skill, isn't it? Is that what the white dot means? That's a good skill. If the level 25 and level 50 don't turn out to be helping speed M, more than happy to keep this and then sub skill seed it. So I did pretty good. I said helping speed is going to be good and I got it. Thank you for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions about Darkrai, or if you have any different interpretations of Darkrai. Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe.